Alright, so the first video was volume of pyramids. This video is volume of cones, and the reason we do it in this order is just like surface area. You need to remember that cones are a specific type of pyramid. Because we are working with cones, and remember your cones are pyramids with circle bases, we are going to be bringing back pi and radius. So make sure that you are familiar with that, diameter to radius, radius to diameter, stuff along those lines. So of course we are going to cover the formula first. Y'all always do better on like the stuff with pi and radius. So this should be a breeze for y'all as well. Your volume is equal to 1/3 pi times the radius squared times the height. So again, I am going to go through and tell you again what all of those things mean. So you have pi. If you're entering this on Google Slides, all you have to do is write that word pi next to your number. There's not really a pi button. Remember, this r squared stands for the radius squared, so the radius multiplied by itself. And this last part, h, is the height. So here's your formula that we will be using for cones. And remember, our general pyramid formula was volume equals 1/3 area of the base times the height. This is still that because you need to remember the base is a circle and the area of the base or the area of a circle is pi r squared. So we just replace the specific formula with the capital B. So example 1, again, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite that formula. So volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. So in all of these examples, I was really nice to you. I don't make you find the height. I don't give you random numbers. I either give you the radius or the diameter, and then I give you the height as well. So it should be pretty simple. It all comes down to calculator after you get everything plugged in. So when I start doing this, I'm going to start plugging in numbers for those variables. I still have 1/3. I still have pi. But instead of r, I now need to put my radius in place of there. Remember that radius goes from the center of the circle out to the edge. So I'm replacing that r with a 6 squared times my height. That's just the other number in this picture. It goes from the vertex of the cone perpendicular to the base. So that h is replaced with 12. I'm going to go ahead and start simplifying. 1/3 pi times 6 squared. 6 times 6 should give you 36 times 12. You're now going to do that 36 times 12. And we still have 1/3 pi. 36 times 12 gives me 432. I'm going to rewrite this so it's a little friendlier. I'm going to leave the 1/3 on the outside, but I'm going to bring that pi inside parentheses. So I'm going to write it as 432 pi. And your last step, just like the pyramids, is just to divide by 3 or multiply by 1/3 into the parentheses. When I do that, the 432 changes to 144. And we just leave pi as it is, just as pi. So that's your exact answer. The volume of this cone is 144 pi kilometers cubed. Remember, I don't need that decimal approximation. This exact answer is fine. When you plug it in on your assignment, you're going to write it as 144 pi. So don't worry about finding a pi symbol. Don't worry about snipping one and inserting one. You're fine just writing the word pi. So again, example 2, pretty straightforward. Volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. When I look over at this, I didn't give you the diameter. I made it really simple for you and already gave you the radius. So we just plug in 1/3. Pi doesn't change, but now my radius gets replaced with a number. And I start at the center, go out to the edge. So I see that my radius is 11 squared times my height, which is the other measurement in this drawing, which is 22. I'm going to simplify step by step again. So 1/3 pi. 11 squared is 121, and I still have times 22. So I'm now going to do 121 times 22. When I do that, that gives me 2,662. When I rewrite that, though, it is 1/3. And remember, I put the pi in there with the number just to make it look better. 2,662 pi. And your last step, of course, is to either multiply by 1/3 or divide by 3. When you do that, it does give you a repeating decimal. So we're just going to call it 887.3 pi centimeters cubed, and that is your volume of this cone. Example 3 is where I try to trick you up, but it shouldn't be that big of a deal. We've been dealing with it this whole time. I do not just give you the radius. If you look, the line I give you stretches from side to side of the circle and goes through the middle. So I gave you that diameter. Remember, your diameter is equal to 2 times the radius, which means in order to find the radius, when I give you the diameter, you just split it in half. So my radius is equal to 8 divided by 2. So I know that my radius is 4. I can now plug it into my formula. I have 1/3 pi. Instead of r, we're going to put 4 squared times my height, which when I look at the cone is 8. Simplifying all this, you have 1/3 pi. 4 squared becomes 16, and we're going to multiply that by 8. So 16 times 8 gives me 128. So again, I'm going to rewrite that. 1/3 stays on the outside, but I want my pi to be next to the number. In your last step, you multiply that 1/3 in, or divide 128 by 3. When I do that again, you get a repeating decimal. So we're going to call it 42.67 pi. And our volume is measured in miles cubed. So this is your final volume for this cone. These next examples, hopefully you already have the hang of it. I'm just going to work through them, talk through my working process. It'll be pretty quick. If you have any questions, make sure you send me a question on Remind, Google Classroom, email me, or just rewatch the beginning 3 examples of this video. If you understand it by this point, you can go ahead and stop. If you just needed the first 3 examples, you're good to go. Remember, you can do that with all the videos as well. You just keep going until you think you've got it. So our volume is equal to 1/3 pi r squared h. Here, my radius is given. It's kind of small, hard to see, but I know that my radius is 1, so it's going to be 1 squared times my height, which is 10. Simplifying all this, you have 1/3 pi. 1 squared, or 1 times 1, is still 1, times 10. And then finally, this part should be easy still. 10 times 1 gives me 10 still. I'm going to put the pi inside parentheses with 10. And your last step is to divide 10 by 3. It gives you a repeating decimal, so 3.33 pi feet cubed is fine for your volume of this cone. Example 5, I give you the diameter here, so remember to find that radius, all you do is split that in half, so 14 divided by 2 gives us 7 for our radius. So my volume is 1/3 pi r squared h. I start plugging in my numbers. 1/3 and pi don't change. What changes is that r, my radius is 7 squared, times my height is 14. When I do 7 squared, or 7 times 7, you should get 49. We're going to go ahead and multiply 49 and 14 together. When I do that, 1/3 and pi stay the same. 49 times 14 gives me 686. Again, just to make it look better, I'm putting the pi on the inside, so 686 pi. And your last step, multiply by 1/3 or divide by 3, and you end up with 228.67. Don't forget your pi goes with it, feet cubed. A lot of you forget the pi, so please make sure you're writing in pi next to it or multiplying it out, something like that. Example 6, still volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. I give you the radius here, so it's pretty straightforward. Instead of r, we're going to put 12. And instead of h, we're going to put 24, because that's the height of our cone. I start multiplying stuff out. 12 squared, or 12 times 12, gives me 144. And I still need to go back and multiply that by 24. When I multiply 144 times 24, I end up with 3,456. I go ahead and rewrite that. 1/3 stays on the outside. 3, 4, 5, 6. And pi is on the inside with it. And finally, your last step, like I've told you and you're probably tired of hearing, multiply the number inside the parentheses by 1/3 or divide it by 3. And when you do that, you get 1,152 pi kilometers cubed as your volume. If you stuck around this long, you're probably tired of hearing me talk, but this is the last example. So one more time, our volume is equal to 1/3 pi r squared h. Here I give you the diameter. So remember, for radius, we need to divide that by 2. And I see that my radius, or I find out that my radius is 9. And my height here is 18. So plugging all of this into my formula, 1/3 pi times my radius, which is 9, squared times my height, which is 18. I simplify what I can, so 1/3 pi stays the same, but your 9 squared is now going to be 9 times 9, which ends up being 81. And then we still have times 18 on the end. 81 times 18 ends up giving me 1,458. To rewrite it one last time, 1/3. 1,458 is on the inside of the parentheses with the pi. And finally, your last step, you multiply by 1/3 or divide by 3. And when you do that, you end up with 486 pi for your volume, and your units of measure are yards cubed. So again, I'm only giving you like 4 or 5 questions on cones. Make sure that if you have not completed previous assignments, you do that. Finish your teacher appreciation assignment. It gets you out of having to do 2 assignments. And if you have any questions, let me know.